Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Randy Welsh with the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance, bringing to you our April NWSA webinar, where we try to bring you information that will be helpful and useful for the wilderness stewardship community. I'm joined today by our new Executive Director, Joelle Marrier. Joelle and I are going to be doing a dual role through this month and transition, and she will transition in as the new ED singular when we get to the end of this month. So from May going forward, and I might just be a guest host or occasional consultant as time goes on. But Joelle is transitioning and taking over the reins. We're so glad to have her here finally. And with us today is our presenter, Dan Abbe, who is with the Forest Service, an employee at the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. And Dan, go ahead and start your screen share just so we can see the presentation topic for today. And Dan is here to talk to us about the materials that are available to the wilderness steward that are provided by the Forest Service and the other agencies. Many of which are located on the Wilderness Connect website. So this will be a chance to learn about what the Carhart Center does, the resources that they have available, and then the resources from all the other agencies that are available on wilderness.connect. So with that, Dan, I would go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Thanks so much, Randy and Joelle. And thanks everybody for attending. This will be fairly informal. I'm going to ask you guys to help find some stuff on your own, but we'll just go ahead and kick things off. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to use the chat. I'll ask you to put stuff in chat as we move through. So hopefully you guys are familiar with that. Again, my name is Dan Abbe. I'm the Forest Service representative and wilderness specialist at the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. I represent the U.S. Forest Service. So we have 4 agency representatives here at the Arthur Carhart Center, one for each one of the agencies. Sort of my background real quickly, I've been working for the U.S. Forest Service for going on about 8 years now. Prior to that, I worked for the National Park Service, and I did spend a little bit of time working for the Bureau of Land Management as well. All that time, I've been in and around wilderness, either directly or indirectly. I feel very fortunate in those experiences, and I feel very fortunate to be in the position I'm in today. So that's a little bit about me. And as we go through this presentation, like I said, feel free to jump in at any time or put something into chat. So how many folks, just you could either raise your hand or put something in chat, are familiar with the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center, just out of curiosity. All right, thanks, Kim. I see Kim is. Anybody else? Okay, well, as you can see on the slide, there's the mission of the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. We provide education, information, and training. And we do have a focus on agency staff. So our primary audience for training purposes is agency staff. But we do provide a lot of information, and some of that information, actually all that information, uses the platform of Wilderness Connect. So I'm curious to know how many folks are familiar with Wilderness Connect in general. Just go ahead and put it in chat or a thumbs up. Awesome, Kim, thanks. Anybody else? Okay. Well, we'll roll through this, and you guys will get a little more familiar with Wilderness Connect as we go through. Starting down the path for today's session, I introduced myself and the Carhart Center. We'll talk about objectives here in a minute. Then we'll get into Wilderness Connect, and we're going to do something a little bit different when we do that. And then I'm also going to talk about some of the other information that's available, other resources you may be able to find. And you guys may help me in the fact that if you know of resources that have been helpful for you in the past, I'd love to hear about it. And then also wind things down towards the end with questions. I think it'll probably be about a 30-minute presentation or so. So I depending on how many questions you guys have or how much interest there is, I don't know whether we'll chew up the entire hour, but we have it if we need it. So objectives for the day. You can just see them an introduction to Wilderness Connect. Give you guys an idea about what you may find there. There is a huge volume of information on Wilderness Connect, both for the general public as well as for practitioners. And we'll show you some of that in here in a bit. And then also we'll talk about where you can identify or where you can find some of that information. So hopefully through this process, you'll get comfortable with at least knowing where to start if you're looking for given information on Wilderness Connect. And I also want to give you guys a little bit of just a taste of what may be available out on the web. And again, learn from you all as far as if there's resources that you're using, either in researching wilderness areas that you may be going to visit, or if you work in wilderness and wilderness stewardship, resources that you might use to gather information on a given project or a given topic. And then also just want to recognize the fact that the web has provided a platform for a lot of people to experience wilderness in sort of a different way. And it adds value to the wilderness community and to wilderness stewardship in general. So there's some of those are the objectives I sort of identified for us for today. So Wilderness Connect, sort of what is it? As I sort of talked about a little bit previously, it provides information for not only the public, but also for practitioners. You can see the graphic right there that basically shows what you would, the screen you would come to if you hit on Wilderness Connect. And I'm going to try this and see if this works. So if I click on the link, I'm hoping it'll pop right up and show you. See if I'm getting a blank. So
It's coming. It's just taking a time.
okay, so there it is. This is what you guys would see if you were to click on www.wilderness.net. And I want to sort of draw your attention to the top here. What you can see on the top is a number of icons as well as a tab over here called the Practitioners tab.
Recording in progress.
So what you're seeing, oh my goodness.
Yeah, let me.
Not sure.
Yeah, just
Thanks, Randy.
muting everybody.
Okay. So what you're seeing is when you come to the public page, this is what you'll see. On the top, you'll see this Practitioners tab, which we'll talk about a little bit more when we get going here. But this is what you should see. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do here in a minute is, if you have either a smartphone or you have two screens that you're working off for this presentation, or you're comfortable toggling between the webinar and actually looking for stuff on Wilderness Connect. Let me see. Oops, looks like I think I gotta try this. All right. So what you should see now is back to the PowerPoint. Is that correct, Randy?
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to ask you to do is a little bit different. So this is going to be kind of like a scavenger hunt. I'm going to ask you guys to use your smartphones if you have a smartphone with you, or as I said, if you have a spare screen or some other way to access Wilderness Connect. I'm actually going to ask you guys to navigate to certain things and find certain things in this sort of virtual scavenger hunt. So this is kind of what we're going to do. I'm going to test your skills and finding information. And what I'd like you to do is just put it in the chat when you find it, and we'll see who's the fast draw here when we go through this. So if everybody's ready, here's the first question. So again, it's sort of a scavenger hunt. The first question is, who are the partners that make Wilderness Connect possible? So if you go to that main web page, that public facing web page, which should look like that, who would be the partners that make Wilderness Connect possible? So just put that in chat if you would. Randy just gave you a big clue, and I'm seeing people must be working on it. BLM, thanks, Kim. BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NPS, and U.S. Forest Service. That's 4 of them. There's one other. Oh, you got it. University of Montana. I'm sorry. So yes, so there it is. So this is going to be kind of how we're going to move along here. And like I said, I need you guys to jump in and add your feedback. Thanks, Lee. Good job. All right. So ready? Here goes. Number 2. This one's a little more complicated. So if you're to go to the practitioners tab, so if you're on your smartphone, upper right side, you should see the practitioners tab. And then you need to navigate over to the law, regulations, and policy. And I want you to go ahead and tell me where your agency policy would be located. So not fair. Nice, Richard. That's all right. Hopefully, even though you're using one finger, hopefully you can get there. But so if you go again to the practitioners page over to law, policy, and regulations. So the practitioners page, you can see you should be able to get there, and then you'll see on the far left, the top left corner, it says law, policy, and regulation, or excuse me, law, regulation, and policy. If you were to click on that, then it should basically take you to where your policy is located. So, and then case law. So once you get to that agency policy part, you should be able to hit on a subheading of case law, and just, you don't have to list all the headings or subheadings under case law, but type 1 or 2 in the chat for me. So that's where you need to go. And if you're having trouble finding it, put it in the chat, or maybe I see our Hikers Workers Lab. Well, awesome. So you found the case law. That's great. There should be some at the top of that page. There should be a number of topics. Like one of them is commercial services, and then there should be a number of other sort of categories of case law. Or just tell me, Tara, just tell me which category. Access. Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Lee, great. Awesome. You guys are on it. Uh-oh. Susan, I'm sorry you're having technical difficulties. It says, but I can't make it show up on my alternate screen. Maybe you can fiddle with that a little bit. All right, so good. So at least a few of you were able to navigate and find the answer to that subheading question. So we're going to move to the next one, which the next one is still under the practitioners tab, but I'm asking you to look at a bunch of different things. So you're actually going to be looking at a number of the different headings, so to speak, that you see at the top. And the first one is agency resources. So just click on the agency resources and just put in the chat one thing that you think is helpful. Or for that matter, one thing that you think doesn't make any sense. But navigate to agency resources, which is right there, and tell me what you find in there. And hopefully you find something that might be a little bit helpful. WSP guide book for Forest Service is helpful for me. Awesome. Great. Tara, that's helpful. So WSP stands for Wilderness Stewardship Performance, and it's one of the things that Forest Service does to try to make sure that we're doing a good job of wilderness stewardship. Interagency agreement and reports. Thanks, Lee. Anybody else? Give you a second here. Sarah, were you able to find your way back in, or are you still having some difficulty? All right. So the next question was toolboxes. So if you were to go to the other header, toolboxes, you should see a number of toolboxes. In fact, if you count them all up, there's 38 toolboxes. And all these toolboxes were designed and brought about because of folks' interest in a given topic. So if you could navigate to the toolboxes section and just put in the chat again, one or two of those toolboxes that you in particular are interested in, and maybe you're going to go back after this presentation or at sometime in the next week or two, you might go back to that toolbox and dig in a little bit deeper. But just go ahead and again, if you would, type into chat maybe one of the resources, one of those toolboxes that you find helpful. Traditional tools and skills, trail conditions, awesome. David, thank you. Night sky, that's becoming a really big issue. Yes, crosscut saw and JHA. Thanks, Kim. Good job. All right. Awesome. So like I said, you'll see there's 38 toolboxes total. We try to keep those toolboxes up to date, but to be completely honest, with 4 representatives and 38 toolboxes, if we get those toolboxes updated every couple of years, we're doing a good job. Some of them have taken longer than that, but there's a number there for folks. Awesome. So guess what? The next one I'm going to ask you to do, and you can see on your slide, is minimum requirements. So for this one, there's a number of online courses that you can take for minimum requirements analysis, or MRA. So the question is, there's 2 of them I'm thinking of right off the top of my head that you can take. If you could list one of those 2, and then what the cost is, how much they cost for you to take. So both one screen and no phone. I'm sorry, Charles. We'll get through this and to some other stuff. So I apologize that it's not helpful for you. Kim, they're free. That's correct. 8 years ago. Awesome. All right. All right. So I'm gonna move on to our next screen, which is still practitioners. So training. Asked folks list 2 online training courses that you may take. There's a whole number of training courses in there. Again, if you find that training tab, you can look at it. You'll see there's a number of different training tabs in there. There's in-person, there's online, there's also webinars. So for instance, this particular webinar is being recorded. It'll probably be uploaded into the training page under webinars in the coming days or week. But if you can find a training session that you may be interested in, just go ahead and put that into chat. And then Charles, because of your comment, I'll share my screen and we'll navigate through Wilderness Connect as well. Thanks, David. WSP Planning Framework. So all these online courses that are offered through Epley, they're all free of charge if you want to take them. You'll also notice if you explore some of those courses, there's a couple of certificate programs offered by the University of Montana and the Wilderness Institute here at the University of Montana. So those do have a fee associated with them, and it's actually a series of courses that get you to the point where you can get a certificate. All right. So now we're going to switch over. I need you to navigate to the public facing page. And I want you to go hit on the tab that basically, so here's the public facing page. This is the one, if you just type in www.wilderness.net, this is what you would see. And as you can see on the top sort of left-hand side, you'll see the Visit Wilderness. So just real quick, click on that and go visit a wilderness, and then maybe just type into chat something of interest. You should be able to type in your wilderness name and it should pop up. And then there'll be a bunch of information related to that. All right. So this last one, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go to wilderness .net, and I'm just going to walk you guys through this for this last one, because this is kind of fun, and hopefully this will give you guys sort of a flavor. And if you haven't in chat, thanks, Tara. If you have a specific interest that your question you have about wilderness, put it into chat or just maybe come off mute and ask. But we can see if I can find information for you. So if you wanted to learn about sort of that fast facts type information, if you go to this tab here, you'll see that a whole bunch of information comes up. Here's the fast facts, key laws, history, people, quotes, a whole plethora of information. And it's also duplicated. This is just how Wilderness Connect is now formatted. What you see here is actually duplicated here as well in the main body. So if you're to go to fast facts down here, some fast facts will come up. And here you go. Here's a whole bunch of trivia if you want to try to stump your friends. So let's say you want to know, well, what's the newest wilderness? Does anybody know what the newest wilderness area is? Type it into chat. Well, if you click on it, 37 new wilderness areas in California, New Mexico, and Oregon, March 12th of 2019 by the Dingle Act. Actually, there's some newer wilderness areas that were designated even more recently. It just we haven't had a chance to update Wilderness Connect yet. So there were some areas added, I believe, in 2022. So anyway, there's the fast facts. If you go to Wilderness, visit Wilderness. So this is another kind of interesting page, public facing page. If you go to maps, there's a whole number of maps, but one of the ones I think is really worth exploring is an interactive map. It's a GIS based platform, and it will show you basically the lower 48, but then you can zoom in or zoom out as you see appropriate or you think is appropriate. And as it comes up, you'll see the different wilderness areas highlighted. And depending on the agency will be the color. So the Forest Service is typically in a green. The Park Service is typically sort of that purple color. The BLM is sort of that yellowish or beige color. And then I believe that the yellow is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So the cool thing about this map is you can zoom in and you can move around and you can see the wilderness areas will pop up. And then if you want to look at information on a given specific wilderness area, you just click on it and it'll give you that information. And then there's more if you want more. So if you're general public just looking for information on a given wilderness area, this might be a place to explore. So, and then again, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm sorry, I keep looking away because I got the two screens going on here. This is the homepage you come to. There's a bunch of general information you see in the body of it. If you're a practitioner, you would go on the practitioners tab. And then on the top, these are the tabs that are really sort of helpful and sort of zero in where you would find given information. There is a lot of information on Wilderness Connect. In fact, it's overwhelming at times. But if you have any question, I would steer you towards Wilderness Connect and it'll help you out. So another interesting thing, we're going to talk about this a little bit. Let's see if I can. So there is a search engine on Wilderness Connect for organizations. This is what it looks like. And there's a lot of information here as well. You can search, as you can see, there's a bunch of different search options for you. But if you're interested in a state, a specific state, so how about someone just type into chat which state you're interested in finding out what kind of wilderness related organizations there may be. Or Charles, if you wanted to come off mute and just say, hey, how about check Oregon? Oh, I see Randy put Oregon. So if we go to Oregon, search, here's a whole list of potential organizations that may be in that state that have some connection to wilderness or wilderness stewardship or education. So again, Wilderness Connect has a huge volume of information available to both the public as well as to practitioners. At the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center, we focus primarily on the practitioners tab, and we do the curation on most of the information on this side of the web page. So if you do have any questions in relation to wilderness stewardship, by all means, reach out to me, or you can find, in fact, if you go down to the icon here, it'll take you to our website, which looks like this, and has a bunch of information for you. So the other agency too that I'm going to bring up is, well, let me back out of here and go back to the presentation, because that's going to lead us. We did that. So that was the scavenger hunt that we did. So, but we talked about other web resources, and actually I'm going to skip ahead because this was the one I just showed you guys on Wilderness Connect, which is other organizations. And then I just picked a few of the many. And that just gives you an idea of some of the organizations that are involved in wilderness stewardship. And the number of organizations involved in wilderness education and information and stewardship has really blossomed over the last 20 to 30 years. So there's a huge amount of information out there. And again, if you guys know or utilize a particular web resource to help you find out information about wilderness or with your wilderness stewardship responsibilities, put it in the chat because that would be helpful for me. This webinar is sponsored by the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance. So that's another good place to find a lot of information if you're interested. And I did, let me see if I can do this. I'll just put this list that I have in the chat. And hopefully, I don't know if the links associated with it are going to work or not. It doesn't look like they do. But there's some of the names of the different organizations. That might be helpful for you. I'm going to back up one slide because we've talked about web resources. So these are just other web resources, and I'm just going to go to the one at the top. So recently in 2021, there was a group of us that got together and started a number of virtual trainings, and it was called the National Wilderness Skills Institute, or NWSI. And I'm going to try this real quick. So I'm going to, well, let's see if I can do this. And I apologize because I've kind of gotten off script here. But the reason I wanted to bring up NWSI, or the National Wilderness Skills Institute, is because over the last 2 years, there's been a number of recordings that have been done that are on this website that you guys may be interested in, or you may want to share with folks. So there is this year, this is the plan for this year, the National Wilderness Skills Institute, which will be virtual training. But if you go to the bottom of this page, you'll see what was done in 2021. And if you were to click on this, it should take you to, I guess, the program for that year. So this again was in 2021. And then the cool thing about the program is if you scroll down through it, these sessions are hyperlinked. So if there's a recording associated with it, it would have it there. So if you wanted to click on, let's say, the wonderful world of wilderness or of visitor use, it'll take you to a description, as you see here, and then you can see view recording. So you can actually view the recording itself. So that's another resource that's available to you if you're looking for virtual trainings or opportunities to hear sessions that were provided over the last 2 years from the National Wilderness Skills Institute. And then this is the wildernessskillsinstitute.org was the page, but you can see there's also Wilderness Skills Institutes regionally spread out across the United States. And then from this web page, you can see there's the different links. Not all of these necessarily have trainings or recordings, but it's good to know about if you're trying to tap into some existing training. So, I think it was Sarah mentioned crosscut training. So if you're looking to maintain your crosscut sawyer class or certification, it might be good to tap into this to figure out where they may be having a session. All right, so there's some resources. And then also I'm going to sort of wind things down here by just talking about sort of resources that are exposing a broader number of people to wilderness in general. And these are just a bunch of different links to different videos. So there's sort of traditional, let me see if this works too. I'll try to put this in the chat. I'm hoping it's going to work. But
well, the presentation will be posted on our website following today's presentation, so the link should work in it when it's posted.
Super, thanks, Randy. So I did just put it into chat. You might have to just copy it and paste it into your browser as far as the specific YouTube version of that chat. But some of the things that are kind of fun is if you're to look up the Wilderness Act, this one that was done in 2021. So that was Dr. Michelle Riley, who was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service representative, worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to produce a video for Carhart that just talked about the Wilderness Act and sort of a basic understanding of the Wilderness Act. It's about a 8 or 9 minute video, so it's kind of an introduction to the Wilderness Act itself. And then some of the others are just kind of fun videos. The letter from Wallace Stegner is just kind of a well done, feel good video with some words from Wallace Stegner prior to the passage of the Wilderness Act. So it's kind of not only historically relevant, but also relevant today. And then some of the other ones that you see there, Wakapia was the Crow Nation's video about the Crazy Mountains and their push to encourage the Forest Service to designate wilderness on that particular forest. And then also you'll just see a couple other ones that they're kind of fun. So let me just see if this works. I'll show you this. This is the Fish and Wildlife Service video. I don't know if it's going to play. Randy, you'll have to let me know if I don't know if the volume's going to work on it or not.
Yeah, it seems to be loading.
I didn't maximize for video, so I don't know. But this, like I said, was a 9 minute video. It's sort of an introduction to the Wilderness Act.
Yeah, depending on the bandwidth, it may be a little slow getting loaded.
Okay, we'll just exit the page.
Yeah,
So
probably.
that's
It's
yeah.
too much bandwidth. Not
but those are some of the kind of fun things, and I bring it up because there's a large part of our population that never sets foot in wilderness and may not have the opportunity to set foot in wilderness. But what we found across the board is there is a wide support for wilderness in the United States, and some of that support is people just wanting to know that wilderness exists, that it's there. So if they can't actually set foot in it, if the web can help them experience it visually, that adds value as far as I'm concerned. So, all right. So that's pretty much all I had. It was a real sort of whirlwind presentation. I'd be interested if you guys have any questions, or if you have any, like I said, any resources that you use on a regular basis.
So Dan, are the wilderness distance learning courses still available at the University of Montana? And I know that the Carhart Center had a whole host of online courses through Shipley and Associates. Are those still available? I think it was the
Yep.
University of Illinois.
Yep. So the EPLI courses are still available. They are, if you go to that training page, you can find them. You need to register for them. There's, like I said, there's no cost associated with them, but you can take those courses. The wind depth program here at the University of Montana through the University of Montana's Wilderness Institute, they've gone through some staffing changes. Terry Gunderson, who used to be the director for that program, has retired. So they're working on sort of finding a new director and moving that forward. As far as I know, that they will continue to offer that, but I haven't gotten any specific updates in relation to that.
I mentioned both of those just for the stewardship community, that if you feel like you needed more in-depth training, that those distance learning courses are one way to get, official classroom training that often can be applied toward learning certificates or even credits with some courses.
Right. Yes. And they are, more and more universities are starting to provide some courses either specifically on wilderness. Typically in the past, that sort of rolled into conservation education curriculums that are done at university level. But there are a few programs that actually give quite a bit of attention to the wilderness movement in the United States in particular. The wind depth program's a really good one. That's the Wilderness Distance Education program at the University of Montana that has that certificate you were alluding to. I can tell you that I know hiring managers, if they have a wilderness related position, if they see someone has that certificate, that's reassuring, that they have that solid grounding in wilderness stewardship and history.
So Dan, we have a question from Kim as to who is the current contact at wilderness.connect now that the previous manager retired.
Yeah, so Lisa Ronald did retire. Well, she didn't retire. She moved to a different position. I think she's working for American Rivers or another conservation organization focusing on river stewardship. They just hired a woman by the name of Heidi Blair, who will take her position. Lee Curran is the current person that we use to help us update the web page. And Kim, if you have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear them, because if I can help sort of make any introductions. Wilderness Connect is a cooperative sort of agreement between the agencies and University of Montana. They definitely take a more active role in curating sort of that public facing content than Carhart does. But if you want to suggest names, Lee Curran is the person's name. And if you email me, I can definitely get that to you. So, and
all right. Well, in the time that we have left available for us, if there are any questions for Dan, go ahead and enter them into the chat and we'll just take them as they come in, or raise your hand and we'll recognize you to go ahead and speak if you want to do it that way.
I do see, I think, yeah, Kim, you mentioned you did the WSCP Wilderness Stewardship Certification Program. There was one beyond that. Yeah, actually, maybe I can do this. Since I'm sharing my page. Oh.
We have a question about the rare two areas. Are those maps on any of the wilderness.connect? And I don't believe that wilderness.connect has the rare two areas, but Forest Service used to have a rare two website that you could go to, or the roadless area rule, the roadless conservation area rule has all the rear two inventory maps posted on it.
Yeah. And I can help you try to find that stuff. I'm not familiar with it, where it's located, but I could definitely sort of put you in contact with folks that may have a good idea where that is. So again, if you go, these are certificate programs, and this is basically, like I said, through the University of Montana specifically. I know Epley was also trying to do a certificate program as well. So they have a really robust conservation library for online courses. And if you go to Epley Institute, you could find out more about that. Here's the basic wilderness stewardship certificate. I believe that's what you were referring to, Kim. This is the wilderness management certificate, which, as you can see, is substantially more of a commitment, both in time and financially, than the basic course. But those are the two that the University of Montana offers through the Wilderness Institute.
So Dan, Richard has a question about user trail management plans. Is that available in one of the toolboxes?
You know, when you say user trail management, you will find trail condition monitoring toolbox, which focuses on monitoring it. I guess.
I think Richard's probably wondering more about social trails. Is there something in the toolbox about managing social trails?
There is. It's going to be it. If you go down to the references section in the toolbox, I think you'll find some information. It might not call it out specifically. You might have to dig a little bit into it. But like Marion's monitoring trail conditions, I think he mentions it. There's also, if you shoot me an email too, I can give you a little bit more. There's been quite a bit of work done, like both in Yosemite National Park as well as Denali National Park. There's been quite a bit of work done on social trailing, and then the BLM has done some social trailing projects in and around St. George, Utah, and then also in areas outside of Las Vegas. So there is some stuff done on social trailing. A lot of times it's going to focus on restoration efforts, but I know outside of Las Vegas, they did a mapping exercise, and it was in a wilderness area. They determined that even though the management action of restoring social trails to a natural condition, even though that trammeling was going to happen, it would far outweigh the impacts associated with having all these small social trails. I'm trying to keep up on the chat. I see you guys are jumping in there. Oh,
yeah, I think that's a popular topic.
Yep. So David just mentioned in chat, do a search for social trails. Yeah, I see Richard. Yeah. And then yeah, Kim, there's a growing body of information on social trailing. It's a common issue across the United States, to tell you the truth. Richard, that's great to see that you guys actually have them mapped. One of the things that if you are mapping them, I think you can start to get some basic numbers of the impacts that are associated with sort of unauthorized or user created trails, and how important it is to maintain your existing trails, and through education and outreach, focus on using those trails. A lot of the social trailing issues that I've become aware of are usually associated with sort of site-specific issues, whether it's climbing management or access to a given recreational site. So climbing management's an issue also for fishermen. You'll see a lot of social trails associated with around high alpine lakes or even lakes or river systems where fishermen have created social trailing, in the riparian areas, which can have a negative effect on natural systems. That's awesome, Richard. If you guys have it back to 2018, that's awesome, because you can demonstrate trends and other information. So that's awesome. Yeah. So all trails, yeah, that's a growing issue in a lot of places, because all trails is using, my understanding is they're using AI to look at the landscape, and if they see a linear feature, they just assume it's a trail, which is potentially problematic, as you can imagine.
All right, well, we have a few more minutes left. If you guys do have any questions that you'd like to get answered about the types of materials that are available for you, go ahead and type those in while we have Dan. This is meant to help you understand what resources are out there to do your wilderness management with your organization a little better.
And also, I did put my email in the chat. I'll put my my phone number as well, so you guys have that if you want to give me a call, by all means. Oops.
All right, well, I don't see any hands raised or any other questions, so I'm going to just go ahead and close out this particular webinar. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. Again, we hope it was helpful, that you could see the resources that are available on wilderness.connect and in other places that can help answer your wilderness stewardship management questions, that will help enlarge your knowledge base so that you can do a better job of managing your wilderness and participation with partnership with the Forest Service, BLM, Park Service, or Fish and Wildlife Service, and appreciate just adding to your own personal knowledge base about wilderness and wilderness management. Dan, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing at the Arthur Carhart National Wilderness Training Center. Thanks for your willingness to give out your phone number and email so that people can ask you questions direct. Would definitely hope that people take you up on that. And again, want to thank Joelle for being here to help me with this workshop or this webinar today. And note that for next month, our next webinar is scheduled for, I believe it's May 9th. And May 9th. And we're going to use that as an opportunity to have a conversation with Joelle so that all of you can get to know her a little better as the new ED for the new executive director for the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance. Learn her story, how she got into the wilderness business, and where her role or where her route to coming to the new ED job has been. And so we'll spend some time just talking with her next month so you can get to know her as she takes the reins here at NWSA. I just got to say, it's been a fun role and fun pleasure for me for the last 7 years to be the executive director, and appreciate all of you coming to these webinars where we hope to transfer a little bit of wilderness knowledge and to help everybody better understand wilderness management and connect the community of wilderness practitioners around the country so that you can all work together to help protect and preserve our wilderness areas into the future. So thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you all next month.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Randy and Joelle. Take care.
Yeah, and for those that are coming to Missoula next week, we'll see you there at the National Wilderness Workshop in Missoula, Montana.
Randy, do you